Welcome to Ruger Tech Tips. I'm going to show you how to clean your LCR. Assume you've watched the disassembly video, so now it's time to clean the LCR. First thing I want to do is make sure there's no live ammo in my LCR, so easily can check my chambers, and I have no live ammo in my workspace. A couple tools you're going to need. Going to need a good solvent and a gun oil, just a light viscosity gun oil. Also good gun grease to put on a few components. A general purpose rag just to wipe the parts down, and an oil soaked rag. A couple different size patches, one that's the exact bore size that you need, and just some general purpose patches. And you want some kind of a bore brush as well as a cleaning jag to put the patches on. Some type of brush, like an old toothbrush would work fine. And of course, a good pair of safety glasses. So depending on how dirty your gun is may dictate how you clean it. If it's very, very dirty, you may want to take all the parts, soak them in some solvent in a tray, so also with a cylinder, and get some solvent inside the bore, let it soak while you do the other parts. That's kind of dictate how you clean this. This particular gun is very clean. We just cleaned it a couple times, so this is really just a visual to show you how to do the process. So to start with, I'm just going to get a patch ready, and I'm going to soak down my brush with some solvent, and I'm going to run that through the bore a few times. So if there's any debris in there, residue, I'm going to start to break that up. I'm going to take a patch, I'm going to soak that with some solvent, and I'm going to run that through with my cleaning jag and just push a lot of that debris out, and generally just soak everything really, really well with solvent. Once I've done that, I'm going to run a dry patch through and see what I've got. That's going to tell me how clean my bore is. And again, this one is very clean. So you would do this process, you repeat that process until that comes out completely clean. You're also going to need to scrub the inside of the frame, this window in here, the breech face, around the barrel. Just get some solvent in there. And then take your brush, and you're going to have to work that inside there. Then take your rag and just wipe all the excess off. Once you've done that, you can take your oily rag and just a light coat of oil over everything. Wipe that down. I'm just going to set that to one side. I'm also going to do basically the same thing with the cylinder. Now, you may have to get a little bit more aggressive on the cylinders depending on how much shooting you've done, what type of ammo you've used. If you've used 38s in a 357, you may have a lot of debris in there at the end of the 38 casing, but before the end of the 357 chamber, so you might need to get in there and remove that. So you're just going to go after each chamber and scrub those out, depending on which caliber revolver you have, how many chambers you have. Once you've gotten some solvent in there, you've cleaned that up, it's sunk in. You're going to go in with some dry patches and push those through and see if they come out clean. And just repeat this process for each chamber until your patches come out clean. So I'm going to repeat this all the way around to each chamber. Going to wipe everything down. Last thing I want to do is a very small amount of oil, very light viscosity oil. Don't go crazy here, just a thin coat just to protect it from the elements, and I'm just going to push that through each chamber. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bore. I've kept that handy. I'm going to run that right through the bore. So I'm just going to run a light amount of oil through the bore. Ideally, before you put the revolver into use, I want to get in there with a dry patch, clean that out. One last thing on the extractor area is I'm just going to take a dry patch, and where the extractor sits, I'm going to wipe that out. I want that nice and dry, particularly if you're going to put the revolver into use. I want to keep that nice and dry. So also when you clean your ejector itself, underneath that ejector star, you want that nice and dry. The number one reason we get LCRs back, or any double action revolver, is oil and debris underneath the ejector. So what this effectively does is when our ejector sits underneath there, if there's oil and debris underneath the ejector, it effectively will hold that up. If this sits up even a few thousandths, well then it's larger than the window it sits in. And the tolerance in there, it's pretty snug. We only have a thousandths or two to play with as far as front and back room. So if I've got a few thousandths worth of debris underneath the ejector so it sits up, your cylinder is going to bind, your trigger pull is going to get much heavier, cylinder is going to be hard to rotate, and you're going to notice a lot of malfunction immediately. The fix for that is just lift up your ejector, get in there with a dry patch or a brush, clean that all out, get it nice and clean and dry. There'll be little particles of powder under there, get those all out of there, because some compressed air is a good idea, spray that, get that all out of there, and you're back in business. So run underneath your ejectors, clean and dry. You're really not going to have any issues with that at all. Like I said, that's the #1 reason we get these back for, because people have oil and debris underneath the ejectors. They think they got cylinder binding, and it's just oil and debris. So just keep those clean and dry, should be good to go. So the rest of the parts, you just want to scrub these down, hit them with some solvent, spray these around, hit it with a brush, clean these up. If you leave them in a tray, let them soak, brush everything down through. Your crane assembly in particular gets a lot of carbon fouling built up on that. Scrub that down, hit it with solvent, wipe everything down. And again, I would go part by part by part through all your internal parts, wipe those all down, get those all nice and clean. Now, as far as lubrication goes, people tend to over lubricate. Pretty simple. If you just get some oil, a small amount of oil on your fingertips, just get one hand that's oily, then as you handle those parts, as you're picking those up, as you're handling them, you're depositing a small amount of oil on those parts. It does not need much more than that. So as you're handling the hammer, as you're handling the trigger, as you're handling those internal components, you're leaving behind a small amount of lubricant, protectant. That's fine. That's all you need. Now, a couple key areas where some grease is in order. On the shaft of our crane here, just a small amount of synthetic grease on there works great. Not much, doesn't take much at all, and just wipe that down with your fingertips, just coat that all on there. Same with the bottom front of your hammer, a little bit on there. The top end of your trigger and the nose of your trigger. Just a very small amount, does not take much grease to lubricate those. And then you can wipe down your polymer with a light coat of oil, and then you're ready for reassembly. So you can go in and watch our Tech Tip reassembly video. So thanks for watching this Ruger Tech Tip.